This week in post, unscripted, uncut, it's a live edit. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Davenport. Welcome to In Post. Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to do a live edit. Live in air quotes. I'm not live streaming this, but what I mean by live is I'm going to take a photo from my library. I've done no work on it at all. Press record, we start working on it, and we see what we emerge with on the other side. And I'm going to use one of the photos that I took out at Bird Rock during like my photo therapy session. And there was one point where this surfer was coming in from the evening waves, and I just liked the way he was walking across the scene. And so I want to work on this photo. As I look at it, you know, there's a bit of like this channel of light that's coming through here. You know, this gap that's up in the sky. He's walking into it. I want to try and accentuate that. I certainly want to warm this photo up, make it more of a sunset type of feel to it. This was a little earlier than when the sky did start to turn a nice shade of orange. But I'm going to have fun with the processing on this. So here we go in Lightroom. Let's just go ahead and start with the basics. Let's make sure I got my lens corrections turned on. There we go. And let's do crop and make sure we get the horizon nice and straight. So let's pick a spot of that horizon right around there. Wow, it wasn't much at all. Let's try auto just to see if that does anything. Yeah, that's a little more what my eyes see in there. Maybe that's just a trick of the way that marine layer out there. So let's split the difference. Looks pretty cool. All right, speaking of automatic, let's go ahead and do auto on the processing. And what is it going to do for white balance? It's a little warmer. That's nicer. I'm going to warm that up just a little bit more. Let me check that before and after. What I want to make sure is I don't lose too much of the blue of the surf. All right, I think what we'll do is instead of that, we're going to keep as shot. But we'll warm up the sky a little bit differently. But let's double check the rest of the basics here. So what did auto do for me? It actually got rid of contrast. That's interesting. I do want to raise the exposure on this a little bit. It feels a little underexposed. I was rushing to catch this guy, and I took maybe 4 or 5 photos of him. So I wanted to get a certain pose, you know, holding the board and a separation between his stride and everything. So that took a little bit of work to get. And so I was more concerned about firing the shots and less concerned about the camera settings because I knew I could do a little bit of adjustment when we're in post here. So I'm going to press the J key, check for clipping. So we've got some stuff going on there. Let's bring that black point back up a little bit. I don't mind a couple of pure blacks in there. I do want to check the shadows though. Now leave that where it was. Highlights, I'm going to even pull those down a little bit more. And all right, that's a pretty good baseline for the exposure. So what needs to happen next? I got some color work to do here. Everything is still very blue. I want to draw more attention to the surfer. And like I said, accentuate that channel of light here. And so I might even add a bit of a glow to this as well to soften the water some. I just really want to make sure I draw attention to this cool surfer dude down here. Let's see what else I'm going to do in Lightroom though. Let's go into color. Let's work with color next. So we've got a few things here. I'm just going to click one of these guys and kind of hover around the scene. I'm expecting it to be a whole lot of blue. A little bit of yellows there. Even this is considered a yellow. And what I'm doing, I'm hovering here and I'm watching what gets highlighted on the right-hand panel. So up in this whitish area, there's blue, there's some yellow, and then a whole lot of blue elsewhere in the scene. Okay, a little bit of aquas down in here. That's good to know about. Now, when I adjust these sliders, I tend not to. You can click and you can drag up and down right there with this this double-headed arrow. But sometimes that has the habit of changing more than one color at a time. So I tend to just get an idea for what colors are out there and then start to work the sliders individually. So I want a little bit more of that blue to come in, and also the aquas for the ocean. We had some yellows. Tiny bit of saturation there. I'm going to actually increase the brightness of those yellows. These are very subtle changes, but subtle is my middle name if you've ever watched other videos I have. So we'll darken that down. I know later on I will do some targeted dodging on the surfer, so that surfer is a little bit brighter. But I'm already thinking about moving this into ON1 because I also mentioned doing some type of glow to soften the water. So I suspect I'm going to just do a little bit more here in Lightroom, and then move this over into ON1 where I've got some stronger masking tools and some specialty filters. Let's see if we can do something a little bit about the sky here though. Let's get a gradient on the sky. And I don't want to open it up, but I want to change the white balance, warming it a little bit. Somewhere around there looks pretty cool. Let's even see about adding a tiny bit of an orange cast to it. Let's go a little bit heavier on that so we can see what it's doing. Back that down. Not bad. I'm going to revisit that white balance in a moment. I will actually edge off the darkness of the sky. I'm going to add a second gradient. This will be for the foreground. And this one, I do want to open up. That's good. I'm going to play with a range mask here though and see about protecting some of those shadows. So let's turn on the overlay. And I don't want to hit the rocks as much. I want to keep those kind of dark. So somewhere maybe around there, and we'll back off the smoothness a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at that. Okay, so before and after. So not too happy with the top half of the photo. That's looking a little bit false. So let's get rid of that for now. And let's do a new one instead that's really just going to do a tiny bit of darkening. So ever so slight nudge downward on the exposure. And I think what I'll do is I'll get a little more creative with color, maybe split tone, maybe some other type of warmth addition when I go into ON1. So let's see. One more thing to visit in Lightroom is just to play with that white balance overall. Let's just see about different level of warmth. Okay, that was, I'm going to do before and after on that. Before I made that adjustment, after. I like the additional warmth. I think I'll keep that. And yeah, I think this is as much as I'm going to do here in Lightroom. Let's get this over into ON1. So I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to do an edit in. I'm going to go right over into effects, and I'll see you on the other side. Right, so here we are in ON1, and I'm going to start off right away with just exploring a little bit more of this color, getting a little more of warmth going on here. And let's go ahead and add a sunshine filter. Let's see about doing that. So that's opening things up a little bit for sure. Let's play around with warmth and then start taking the opacity off of that some. So here's nothing, here's some. That's a nice touch of ambiance. I'm going to take that. It's also starting to get into this glow arena that I liked. What else do I want to do here? I still got to rein in this brightness of this sky somewhat. Here's an idea. Let's do this. Let's go to the local adjustments. And okay, the darken preset is already there. Let's get a gradient. And I think if I set this to edges, it'll do what I want. So I'm going to tighten this up. And I'm going to keep the warm spot in the center here of this, just the way the sky is. But instead, just kind of darken the edges around that. That's gradient number 1. Add gradient number 2, which is going to be a standard flat gradient. And will let me do all this stuff. Let's see here. So I'm masking away this effect from the foreground as well as this centerpiece. And so we're really just hitting these clouds here. I'm going to press the O key. You can see what that mask looks like. So we're darkening, but I'm not darkening here. I'm not darkening here. Just this whitish area. And that's giving us a nice looking effect. So before that local adjustment and afterward, that's cool. All right, I'm going to take that. Let me go back over into our settings here. I do want to give the rocks a little bit of a pop, and I'll do that with dynamic contrast, one of my favorites. Now this is way over the top for the entire scene, but what I'm watching is this rock, and this rock. Those are the only ones I care about. So before and after. All right, and the easiest way to deal with this is going to be invert the mask. So dynamic contrast is gone. I'm going to grab the brush. So B for the brush. Let's pop the opacity of my brush up. I'll turn on the perfect brush. We'll make that nice and small. and then just brush over this rock, and then bird rock, which is the namesake. And if you're ever curious, it's not because it's shaped like a bird. It's because that's where the birds hang out. So that's why they call it bird rock. I'm pretty sure almost every coastal town has a bird rock. All right, so let's take a look at that before and after. You know what? I didn't do a thing. I was in paint out mode. That was terrible. X key, paint in. That explains why I wasn't noticing things on the screen. It's like, why isn't this showing up? I know I'm covering things. I didn't change my brush mode. That makes a big difference. There we go. Rock number 2. Good old bird rock. Paint that in there. A couple of single clicks on those little bits. Now we'll check the O key here. Probably another single click in that darkened area there. Maybe 2 or 3 of them. And making sure I hit some of those shadowy areas so it covers most of the rock. That's good. It missed a centerpiece there. All right. O key again. So before and after. Subtle touch, but a touch that I will take. Let's see now. I still feel like I want more warmth. Let's try a photo filter. And we'll choose 85. Ooh, that's nice. Let me see that before and after. I like what it's doing to the sky. Not as much on the foreground. So let's go with a mask. We'll use a gradient. And I'll start with just about half strength. Drop that down here. Rotate it around so we're easing that off of the foreground. Let's see. And now we can dial back the strength of the photo filter somewhat. Okay, let's get rid of that gradient so we can see what's going on here. Let's see before and after on that one. Okay. I like the effect. I still feel like I'm a little bit dark here, at least in this area. Yeah, I want this part to be a little bit brighter to kind of mimic what was happening up here. So let's go back to local adjustments. We'll add a new layer. And we'll do this with some, let's see. All right, so thought process is I'm thinking, do I want to use the brush or do I want to try and take advantage of a luminosity mask, which is going to pick up some of those highlights for me? I'm certainly going to need to do additional work with the luminosity mask because I don't want to apply any type of brightening everywhere. I'm going to give it a try because it may give us a nicer, more natural look. So first thing, add the luminosity mask. And I want this to be brightening things. So we're going to brighten up, and I'll even nudge the highlights up. Actually, I'm going to push this relatively far. This is too far right now, but so we can see this area here. So if I press the O key, you can see that this area here is getting some nice additional brightness there. Anywhere that is white right now is getting that brightness. And let's play with the levels so that this area is largely white. But I'm going to close the window down. So watching the shadows and the rocks so that those don't get the brightness. So you can see that I'm really closing down those rocks now. So again, I'm really paying attention to this area of the photo. This is what I want to get that brightness. Next is we'll add a new mask. So I'm going to get a mask here. And if I choose edges, drop that on here, I can tighten this up just on kind of this, I'll call it this channel, this channel that we're artificially making here. I'm going to turn off the mask view now so I can see what's going on. And I'm going to try and get our surfer. I'm gonna what do you call it? Dodge the surfer a little bit more later. But this will accentuate this little channel of light. And so let's see what that's doing before and after now. Let's turn off that view before and after. Too much up in the sky. Let me get my gradient tool selected again so I can position that better. Let's bring it down more. Tighten it up a little bit more. And then I might need to ease off the strength of that effect there, that adjustment. Let's close this up here so we can see all of our sliders. Okay, let's do a before and after on that. Before and after. Okay, that's pretty good. That's nice. That's a nice touch. Let's work on the surfer now. So we'll add another layer. I'm going to zoom in on the surfer. Did it catch up with me? Oh, it's still thinking. Okay. This is sometimes the problem when I've got 3 or 4 tools running, including the recording software. It takes a little bit of time. All right, here's our surfer. All right, we're going to get our lighten brush. As a matter of fact, I have a preset for this. I've got dodge. So I'm going to dodge this here a little bit. Get my brush set. Perfect brush is set. I'm in paint in, and I just want to go over his board. And I'm going to click a few times in the dark areas of his wetsuit. Get that stuff popped up a little bit right there on his face too. Okay. Okay to see what I've got here. Doing pretty good. Click around there a little bit. A couple more clicks. One more time. Wait for the tool to catch up for us. There we go. All right. And now let's go ahead and zoom back out and take a look at that before and after. Before and after. I'll even nudge it up a little bit more. Just a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Maybe even open up those shadows just a tiny bit. These are very subtle changes, but when we do a before and after on it, it really does make a difference. That board's showing up more. Maybe add a slight bit of detail because he was moving along there. And so we're losing a little bit of detail there. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. I think the last thing I'll try here is going back over into effects. Well, 2 things left. So I still think I'm going to play with the glow a bit and see about taking some of the edge off of the water itself. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. And then I'm going to add a vignette. Those will be the last couple of things we do here. So let's go ahead and start with a glow. So here's the glow. And let's start with a normal. That's really dark. Let's change the blending mode to something a little softer. I like the lighten. Let's see that before and after for a minute. Before and after. What other options do we have here? We've got radiance, which is too strong. Strong is actually pretty good when I look at the water. Not so good for the rocks. What about Dreamland? That's not good for this scene. And certainly not a dark glow. Angel glow. I liked strong, but we're going to need to tailor it some. Let's go up in here. We'll add a luminosity mask again. And what luminosity mask is going to do by default is those dark, shadowy areas are going to get masked away, and the brighter areas will keep the glow. So let's do a before and after on that. Before and after. It is subtle. What about the strength of our glow here? Up that a little bit. Before and after. I'm going to keep that. And let's go finish it off with a vignette. So we'll add the vignette. I'll start with strong. And I'm okay to stylize this kind of heavier than I normally would. I will set the center point. I'm going to bias this down toward our surfer. Let's take the feather all the way down so we can see where this vignette is. Size, we'll bring that down. Reposition it even further. Drag that like down over here. Then we'll pop the feather back up. Let's see, and then we can edge the brightness back into something that's a little more tolerable. So I like the darkness on these edges here. This part's getting a little bit too dark. So I'm going to concentrate on these edges here. And then we'll do a mask. We can mask any filter and even a vignette. So let's just do a simple gradient. Opacity, let's just do 50%. Drop it on the scene there. Bring that up here a little bit and feather it out. And now we'll dial that opacity down some. So let's see. Let's change the shape. Let's change the shape to a, do I want a center? I want an edges. I want to take this off of the edges. No, I don't want edges. I want center. I get confused between those two a lot. This is going to be a little more challenging because I will have to add a final gradient in there as well. You know what? Actually, I was right. I was right about edges. I want to take this effect away from the edges. I want to leave it alone in the center, but take it off of the edges somewhat. Adding the gradient is getting a little difficult. Let's delete the gradient. I'm going to go back to just my straight vignette, and instead I'll just use the brush. I'll use the brush at a relatively low opacity. I do not want any edge detection, so no perfect brush. Make the brush, make the brush really big, and then just kind of do a sweep through the top. That was just one pass. Paint out, X key. I am having troubles today with keeping my my brush mode straight. Okay, that's a little better. Let's get even subtler, maybe just 10%, and do one more kind of around the corner area like that. And then I will use the mask blur tool to blend this stuff together. And I'm just rubbing over the edges of the mask. And I can even go in here. This will be even simpler, actually. I'll feather that mask. I'll make it nice and soft and gradual. That's much better. That was a better choice, using the brushes and then feathering that out. Let's check before and after on that vignette. Before and after. Wow, that seems incredibly strong now that I pay attention to it. All right, lower that down some. A little bit more. Somewhere around there is starting to feel better. But I like that. It's still accentuating, this lighted area down here in the ocean. Surfers entering into it. Played a little bit with the color. That's pretty cool. Softened up the water. Yeah, all said and done, I think this is where I'm going to land with this photo. There's a part of me that's still thinking about the color of the water and playing with that, but I don't think there's enough tones in the image to really do that justice. So I'm going to stick with it the way it is, and I still think it's a pretty interesting story to tell with this particular shot. Well, for the tip of the week, I think it's the feather slider in ON1's masking tools. You saw when I did that vignette work and I used a brush with a low opacity, a few different strokes through the sky. Using that feather slider really just got rid of the edges, the hard edges between those different brush strokes, and really smoothed them all out. Feathered them. Amazingly how they named that. So that's a good tool to have. I'm glad I had it today. And I think that'll do it for this week's In Post. A bit of a long one. Hope that you enjoyed the live edit and you got a few other tips that you can use on your photos. And if you got value out of this, let me know somehow. Comments on the video, social shares are always appreciated. If you got questions about photography, hit me up. Love to hear from you. Until next time, my name is Scott Davenport, and happy shooting.